which we would normally have been able to treat effectively, perhaps to keep his teeth, but he had hepatitis C. He was looking for a transplant. So he would come in from time to time, nicest guy in the world. He'd come in from time to time, broken tooth, chipped off tooth, decay, something wrong. And I would say, we need to fix your mouth. If it's carried to the end, you're going to lose all your teeth. You're going to get a denture. In order to avoid that, I went through the whole thing, over dentures, all four dentures. He said, I understand, I'd love to fix my teeth, but I don't know if I'm going to be alive next year. I just can't justify $50,000 when I may die in 6 months. Can't argue with that, can you? So I said, I tell you what, I pledge to you, I'll take care of it. I'll fix anything that comes in, I'll put you together, I'll repair you. I get this. I wouldn't spend that much money on myself either if I had your condition. So we worked under that arrangement, and so I would patch and repair. Then he got on the trial for that wonder drug Harmony, and he's cured. All of a sudden, think about it. Wow. Going from death soon to live. What do I do now? Just boggles the mind. So when that happened, he came in again, and we went through the whole litany, and he said, I think I'm ready to fix my teeth. It looks like I'm going to live for a while. So we went through over dentures, all on four. He said, I want the best. I want the all on four. So we went through the traditional temporary all on fours. And then we're going to go to the accelerated pre-appointment final all on fours. Radiograph. All those red arrows are recurrent decay. And I'm beginning to see that, I bet you are too, again in this age group, who was well restored at one point in their life for various reasons, now we're seeing recurrent decay, breakage. Are you going to go in and spend another $30,000, $50,000, $70,000 to restore the patient's mouth and still have questionable teeth underneath? Whereas, especially when it's recurrent decay is the problem. Because one thing we know implants are not going to do, they're not going to decay. And they're probably going to stay a lot better than anything else we would ever do. So, it's a pretty easy decision, financials willing. Here he is pre-op. The thing that brought him back in before we determined to do this was his fracture number 5. Because previously some of his fractured teeth were far enough back, didn't bother him so much visually, now this bothers him. And that was kind of the tipping point. Okay, what do I need to do? There's his temporaries. So we've already shown how to do our temporaries. So we're going to zip to his provisionals. And like a lot of the provisionals that we wind up with, they're very acceptable aesthetically, occlusively, phonetically, once the patient acclimates to them over 3 to 4 months. We're basically going to semi-duplicate those, put in a bar, and extend them 1 tooth farther back. Provisionals. Incidentally, now that I think about it, let me also advise us, when you deliver the case, you've taken the provisionals out for the last time, my suggestion is that you and I store the provisionals. I have boxes that I keep those in under the patient's name. If you give them back to the patient, many times they'll get lost. And there will be times where you need to go back to those provisions. So I store them with the Advent card and all the digital information as well. So once again, we've got the greatest strut system in the world here. We've got our provisional all-on-fours in place, radiographed with the temporary cylinders, they all fit. So if we make an open tray impression over those all-on-four temporaries, it's as good as or better than the strutted impression that you just made. How are we going to do that? And give them back their temporaries the same day? Well, let's take a look. You're going to make 4 impressions. You're going to make 2 impressions, standard impressions, over the all-on-fours in the mouth. Not an open tray, just impressions over the temporary all-on-fours. You can do it in alginate if you want to. I do it on polygon, in polygon with my honeycomb. So I make an upper impression, I make a lower impression, bite registration. I vet the vertical dimension and occlusion first. Adjust that if need be. Typically, I hardly need to do anything to that. So I've got my impressions. I trot into my lab. I pour those impressions in fast-setting stone, something that will set in about 15 minutes, 20 minutes at the max. Buff stone, QuickMix makes a buff stone that sets at an accelerated rate, and others do too. So what you're looking at here, and I did a face bow, excuse me, I forgot to mention a face bow before I did the impressions. Now I have the impression of the upper all-on-four temporary has been mounted using the face bow to the upper member of the articulator. Let it sink in for a minute. We'd also made an impression of the lower temporary all-on-four and a bite ridge. So once that impression is set, I can mount that model to the previously mounted upper model. And now I have stone models of the temporary all-on-fours at the correct vertical in centric occlusion. Okay? With me so far? Okay. Now, while those models are setting, the all-on-fours are still in the patient's mouth in the operatory. While those models have been poured and are setting, I'm going back in the operatory. I'm going to make open tray impressions over those all-on-fours. So I never have video of this. It's too nerve-wracking to do this in video at the same time. So I'm going to show you on the model. So I've substituted long pins for the screws that bolt in the temporary all-on-fours. I have cut holes through my dimplant impression tray. So those pins will come through the tray just like you did on your impression just a moment ago. Heavy or rigid material in the tray. Light viscosity honeycomb underneath the all-on-four. That's why I like that little curved tip. I'm going to be able to get it up underneath the crease and get a good impression of the tissue side. Seat the tray as before. Make sure that I can see the pins. Wipe that material away. Do that for the maxillary and the mandibular temporary all-on-fours. So to put it another way, I'm making an open tray impression of the provisional all-on-fours. The only thing that I've done differently to the all-on-fours temporary is to substitute the long pin. Separate the impression. And now embedded in the impression is the patient's temporary all-on-four. Now you got to go back to the lab. I will put multi-unit abutment analog into the impression. I will pour my own soft tissue model. I will inject soft tissue material around those analogs. Let that set for just a minute or two. Pour the rest of the model in a die can or some kind of die set. I will let that set. at least 30 minutes, closer to an hour before I separate. So the patient is going to be cooling his heels in the operatory. That patient appointment is for at least 2 hours or more. And a good hour of it is for the patient sitting in there twiddling his thumb, listening to Pandora, whatever. So here we have the multi-unit abutment analogs in place. Again, be sure if you do this to lubricate with Vaseline, which is fine, all around this area. And I would do that before you put the analogs on, because it's easy to get it around. Just take a microbrush, lubricate that impression material, and then inject your soft tissue material. While the patient is in the operatory, you will need to have purchased some white healing caps that you screw down on top of the multi-unit buttons. If you leave those multi-unit buttons exposed, as you see here, through that period of time, the tissue will collapse severely over the buttons. It will be very painful when you come back and reinsert the provisional on the floor. Those are generally not considered reusable, but these are one-time use. Now, let me back you up. So I have mounted stone models of the temporary almond floors. I have poured the master cast of the open tray impressions. Once those impressions are set and separated, I have the temporary almond floor connected into the master cast. I will take either of these stone models off. In this case, I'll remove the upper stone model and mounted it with the previous site registration to the lower stone model. So I mount the upper master cast, the temporary almond floor to the lower stone model. Mounted stone. Once that is set, that'll take about 15 minutes. Then I will remove the lower stone model, take the lower master cast with the temporary almond floor, and mount it to the upper master cast. Okay? It's kind of cool. It's kind of fun to do this. Take away the temporary almond floors and you've got your mounted master cast. Just evaluate your separation. If the surgery was done as it should be done, we have plenty of inter-arch space. We have 34 millimeters of inter-arch space here, 17 per arch. More is fine, more is better, but at least 17. Back up. So the only other thing that happens here is the temporary almond floors go back in the patient's mouth. The patient walks out just like they came in. So we have effectively combined the first two appointments together. Today, if the patient is willing to stay that long, this is exactly what I do. This is my preferred technique. I've done 2 other cases like this, which were greatly facilitated. I have both of them are elderly patients. So the lesser number of appointments, the better. I have one lady who has such neck issues that I have to hold her head against my chest to keep her head upright while I do anything. Otherwise her head just flops over to the side. So I did all that. And she was able to just snooze in the chair while I did my lab work. Did it on another patient who drove from South Arkansas, 3-hour drive. He was happy to consolidate 5 appointments into 3. Okay. Now, so you've got those master casts, and you've got the stone models, which I can send to my Avident lab partner, who will scan those and provide me with a preview. At this point, you can either go back to your standard denture teeth and wax setups, or you can go the other fork in the direction, which is a milled triangle. I'm going to go to the milled triangle. So there's my middle triangle coming back to me after I've approved the preview. Second appointment. Evident calls it an HTI, a hybrid triangle. Linealized occlusion, cuspid disclusion, separation between the anterior four teeth and anterior envelope of function, not coupling. Even with my strong evident acrylic, I want those anterior four teeth not to come in contact in center. Evaluate all the things that you do with your wax triangle. Lip support, besides the ledge position, occlusion, phonetics. I also want to look at the patient in profile with just a small smile and then a more animated smile, and determine how much lip support we have and how much tooth we're exposing when he goes into a high smile. Go through the same phonetics we talked earlier, the F sound, the D sound, the T and PH sound, and the S sound. Now, again, I offer this patient, if you want to take this home and road test it, we can. He said, well, I don't think I need to do that. I said, well, would you like to just choose something and kind of see how that works out? He said, yeah, that'd be great. So I went back and got an apple, tossed it to him, let him take a bite out of the apple. He chewed that up. Next thing I knew, he had eaten the whole apple. It was a great little test. Sometimes I use crackers or anything that's in the office, just to give them the experience of chewing and eating something before we go to the process. They've already got a pretty good idea what it's going to be like because they've been in the temporary all-in-fours. But now we've got one more tooth, at least one more tooth, farther posterior on both maxilla and mandible. Once I approve the try-in, I may change it or not, and I didn't change a thing. Return that to the lab for final setup. And now we can make the bars. So the lab scans the adjusted, if you do any adjustment to the try-in. I take a new bite registration, they scan that. All that goes into the software, into the computer, and so on the monitor, we get this online preview of the bar and the setup design. Nobel designs the bar in conjunction with Evident, and then we merge those two images on the computer to see the Nobel bar design underneath the setup. So there's the design from Nobel. Before we ever pull the trigger and mill that bar, I have to approve that. Now, Nobel will give me a look at it, transparency through the acrylic, but Evident will give me a much more detailed, transparent look through the acrylic. Today, I paid a lot of attention to how much space we have above and below the bar. And the funny thing is, when I really started asking questions of people that I thought would know, labs, etc., how much is the minimum amount of thickness acrylic for a denture base that we need to have above the bar and below the bar? Guess what? Nobody tells you. Nobody has that number. Well, my number is minimum 2 millimeters of pink acrylic denture base and minimum 2 millimeters of white denture tooth above the bar, and minimum 2 millimeters below the bar to the ridge. Because what makes acrylic stronger is more acrylic, more thickness. Too thin, if you get down to a millimeter or less, particularly less than a millimeter acrylic denture base thickness over the bar in a stress zone, that's a highly likely, highly fracture prone area, even with milled acrylic. And certainly conventional. So we did all of that planning between the second and third appointments. The reason this could be a 2-appointment procedure is if you're gutsy enough to bypass the try-in some clinicians who've done this more than me go to a 2-appointment procedure. They do all that design work on the computer and boom, go to completion. I'm not there yet. I like to try. Okay, so here's our completion. Let's look at screw holes. Good, even though it's kind of catching the lingle of that tooth. You've got a lot of tooth there. That's good, that's good. That's a little worrisome there. Right through the center there could be worrisome, especially with a standard denture tooth. These are the areas that worry me the most. And of course, we got that one to the center as well. But what we've learned is to cut the bar back as much as we can structurally and not decrease the thickness of this area here. Case has been in about 2 years. No breakage so far. Now, we did move the teeth slightly in order to give ourselves more facial thickness of denture tooth area. And I'm using denture tooth in quotes because this is the middle. Customized acrylic. John, could we turn that down to that medium, because it would show it a lot better this way. There's a gentleman that came in to Avident from Microdental, his name is Rob Pryor. He's a master denture technician. And he taught Avident how to not only give a better root form, but also to custom colorize the acrylic, put in some frenum attachments. I mean, all that looks fabulous in the mouth. Completed case from before. So I would commend that to you for possibility for your 3-appointment procedure. You have to kind of get your head wrapped around all those appointments. And actually, you do have that already in the slides that were sent to you, but I'll redo that with John as well for the new ones. I want to show you 2 more things. This is also, I mean, every time I see something coming out of this company, out about every 3 months, there's some major technical advance. Signature teeth. You can design your own tooth. You don't have to use a portrait tooth from Dentsply, a Horace Coulter tooth, a VF tooth. You can design your own. Do I have it on here? just adds another dimension to your possibilities that we never had before. It took 2 years to bring that to the market, but it's available now, and particularly if you're a denture technician and used to setting up teeth, this is a huge improvement. Now, one more thing. Yeah. We can take, this will be similar to what we looked at in one of the other cases, but we do now in the out years where a lot of patients have had hybrids in for a number of years, not just all on fours, but hybrids of all types. Implants are still doing well, but the acrylic is worn out. In the past, we'd have to go back to square one, make a whole new impression, go through another 5-appointment procedure. What we can do now is what we call a retread. So we can retread from an old worn hybrid to a new one, using either a new or the existing framework. My patient here, 4 implants in each arch, had been cycled from overdentures, as you see here, into hybrids. He was a very difficult patient to satisfy phonetically and give him enough tongue space, particularly in the maxilla, without compromising the acrylic too much. And so he did have some fairly frequent fractures of denture teeth and denture acrylic. And finally, the last straw was this fracture here on the lower arch. Now, I didn't do this one for free. This is not one of my complimentary ones. But we were able to do this in 3 appointments. So we simply take those existing hybrids, make a bite registration, face boat transfer with those in place, ship those to the advent lab partner, put him back into his temporaries, and do a retread. We're also going to look real closely at the bars and determine, can we recontour the bars some in order to give us some added denture acrylic thickness. Now those fractures are conventional denture acrylic, they're not milled acrylic, but we're going to put him into mill. So appointment 1, bite registration, photos. I send a lot of photos to my lab to help them out and help them see what I'm seeing. Send the hybrids to the lab partner. Some of the photos I'm sending are small smile, medium smile, big smile. How much denture acrylic do we show in his existing hybrids? We really don't want to show any more than that if we can avoid it. We get back after a preview, we get back a triangle. So we're going to do just the upper arch first, and then he's coming back in for the lowers. So the same type of hybrid, except in this case, the patient did want to experience this. And so he wore this upper hybrid triangle out for 2 weeks. Stayed in that. The lip line is going to cover most of the tooth, so you hardly ever see the white part of what will become the pink denture base. Came back, he was happy with the occlusion, he was happy with the phonetics, which was really my biggest challenge with him. That's the biggest smile he'll ever produce. Fortunately, we were able to thicken this a little bit over what he had before, but satisfy his need for tongue space. So now we've got access openings through the denture-based material per se, not just through the teeth. And then delivery. And you can pull that off with less cost than starting all over, and certainly because we were able to recycle the bars. So the added cost on that is probably about $600 all in, as opposed to $3,500 or so for a standard starting case for all of the four. Last thing. use the same formula. Just think about what your fee has to be for an all-in-four. I'm going to use some arbitrary numbers here, so the number I may come up with may or may not be accurate, but it's the formula that's important. You still have lab costs, you have overhead, and you have to determine profit. Lab costs, overhead costs are going to be determined by your total time in the office and in your own lab. There's the five standard appointments to make the final all-in-four. Not even talking about the temporary, the final. How many hours do you think it will take you to do the case if you've never done it before? Well, you legitimately say, I have no idea how long it's going to take me because I've never done it. But you can make some guesses. We'll come back to that. Lab cost, kind of an average fee in the United States is about $3,500 lab cost, plus or minus. I look at Glidewell's, they usually are advertising something under $3,000. I see some labs advertising $4,000, $4,500, even $5,000, depending on how they're doing it and just what their fee structure is. But let's just take $3,500 as a kind of a middle of the road lab cost for your all-in-four. How many hours? Back to overhead. How many hours to do the case? Master impression. Disassemble the provisional all-in-four. Let's just say you do your metal strutted impression. Take everything away, put the patient back into their provisional all-in-four. When I'm thinking about this formula on a case that I've never done before, I'm going to think through all those activities I've got to do and just make a guess how long it's going to take me. I'm going to make an absurd guess first. Can I do that in 30 minutes? No. Can I do it in an hour? Maybe. First time I ever do it, probably not. Also, if it's a day you got double hygiene, probably not. Can you do it in an hour and a half? Well, probably. So that's kind of how I come up with the time frames. Well, there's some guesstimates of time frames for the first through the fifth appointment. Total it all up, 7 hours. I'm going to say that I think 7 hours is maybe a little on the low side for how much time you will actually spend doing the case. But let's just take that 7 hours times $400 per hour operating overhead, $2,800 overhead cost. Plus profit, you want to make $500 an hour. I'm just pulling a figure out of the air. You want to make a $3,500 profit on the case. That is reasonable. I want to make more profit than that on this kind of case. But let's just use the figures. So I add them all up, lab cost, overhead, profit, the fee becomes $9,800. In my opinion, that's a bare bones figure. I think it ought to be more than that. But what it does tell us